I hear it all the time. We're the Texas of Canada, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to be anymore. I think we can probably just be like people.
What's your story? What's your sign? It's like we're twin flames in a different life.
Would you mind maybe introducing yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Grace. I go by she, they, and I'm in Calgary.
And are you in school or anything?
Yeah, I'm at SAIT, which is a technical school here in Calgary, doing baking and pastry art. Getting up early and making bread and cakes, and that's my day.
Okay, but that's wicked cool. I love that.
I get to bring a whole bunch of like cakes home, which is awesome. Nobody in my house eats sugar, so it's like just for me. That's awesome.
What?
Perfect for me.
Oh man, double homicide. That sucks. I'd be so stoked if someone was bringing home like all of these confection goods, but they just don't, they get eaten or?
Yeah. Oh, they absolutely get eaten. I have a lot of neighbors that would never say no to like a piece of cake.
So you must be like the favorite by far in the neighborhood. I'm super excited to get to chat with you because you wanted to talk about being queer in Alberta, but also specifically talking about like sports and growing up playing sports and realizing that you were maybe not straight.
Yeah, so I grew up in a household where like when you were young, you were put into sports, which was awesome because then you had friends that were outside of school. So if things weren't going great at school, then you had a whole nother kind of like world. Grew up playing ringette and then field hockey, and I rock climbed competitively. It was just all this like physical activity. I realized that I was queer in grade 11 and I was still playing ringette and field hockey at the time. It was interesting kind of going about that because it was like, oh, what if when we're all getting changed in the change room, someone's thinking, oh, what if Grace is looking at me? I was worried other people would be uncomfortable. And it ended up being not a big deal. That's a very common thing of like when kids come up to their parents, like, I'm still the same person, nothing's changed. Well, of course you're the same person.
Exactly.
Nothing has changed. It's just a slightly different way of identifying. But yeah, I was worried that people were going to see that differently, or that I would be asked, like in like a dire situation, be asked to change somewhere else. I had nobody to talk about that with because it's such a, you said people are just coming out of the woodworks that are queer in Alberta because I had no idea that this was such a big community, especially in Alberta because we don't tend to be a very liberal provincial or province, I suppose. Additionally, you don't see a ton of queer people in sports. It's usually very macho, or like you're just in it for like the school period, and then it's a very specific kind of person that would be in such a high competitive sport. So my hope was that other people would see this and realize that in most cases it's not a big deal because the people that love you are still going to love you. Mm-hmm. And no one's going to think that you're looking at them weird in the dressing room unless you have some real weird people in your life.
When I got your email with like the little bio and everything telling me that you wanted to talk about being queer in sports, I actually, when I was first in undergrad, was a part of like this club on campus. I was the president of a club that really talked about like language and empowerment in terms of like queerness on campus. And we did an interview series with athletes who talked about being queer in sports. I was really inspired to see, because this was maybe in like 2016 or 2017 at the time. And these straight athletes were talking about their like queer athlete teammates. And they were like, we were just so happy for them when they came out because they were finally able to be themselves and relax. And it's not a big deal on the team. We're like a family. And I think maybe there can be a bit of a stigma about sports that it might not be received that way. So it's so good to hear otherwise.
Sports is definitely not something that's like just reserved for straight people or just for men or women. There's so much in between that I'm really happy that more people are starting to talk about it now. Because when I started sports and when I was in grade 11 trying to figure things out, I was like, nobody else is queer in sports.
Oh,
That's so not true, right? An interesting thing about being queer is you can have 100 good experiences of people loving you and accepting you, but you're always going to remember the one person that didn't. In the summer between grade 11 and grade 12, I told maybe 2 or 3 people that I was bi at the time. Made one choice of telling someone like the wrong person that wasn't ready to accept it or ready to sort of welcome it. And it turned into the same thing of like, oh, what if she's looking at me when I'm changing, which probably was at my time like the biggest fear of not so much of what if people don't accept it, what if people see it as like weird or like gross, or like predatory. Everyone around me kind of rallied and was like, this is not a Grace issue, this is a you issue. This person was just so sheltered growing up, and that it was like you don't know anyone that's queer. Like I remember feeling like I got like punched in the gut of like, oh, this isn't just something that you like see on TV that like someone's being discriminated against. You're like, oh, this is actually happening. I'm also sheltered. If I just expected everybody to be okay with it, which is a little sad. Like everyone should be like fine with it. It was an opportunity for me to grow as well and be like, okay, this is how I can go about dealing with this, and hopefully maybe educating and seeing like different points of view and not just being like, oh, that person's like ridiculous, like I'm just going to put it to the side. But that there is still hate, and I guess that this is still to some people a bit of a new concept, that they're like,
groundbreaking,
right? First time it's ever happened, but this generation is so much more open about discovering their sexuality.
Brings it close to home, right? Like it's so easy, I think, like especially for me, when I was growing up, I grew up in rural Alberta, like a 5,000 population town. It's so easy when you're in that environment, when you don't maybe think you see or recognize, like you don't recognize queer people that may be around you, to kind of have this like caricature of what you think a queer person is like, that definitely feeds off of all of those stereotypes and can often have like negative associations. Exposure and visibility is so huge in changing that.
Growing up in Alberta, I was like, there's no way that this is going to be okay. And it was like, well, of course it's going to be okay. You're not the only guy that's not straight. I didn't even know where these stigmas came from. My family was very open about like, love you no matter what. Nothing would ever change. Like if you were queer, I think they probably had an idea for a long time before I did.
They were on it.
They were, yeah, no, it was cargo pants and all the, just like the, you know, the stereotypes that you'd see, but we're very accurate and still are.
Oh, yeah.
Really weird when I was about to come out, because I was like, it was this weird fear of what if like I'm not accepted, and it's like, well, what is you that you wouldn't be accepted in this life, in this family that I've grown up in? There's nothing that's ever said that this would not be okay. So where is this idea coming from? And I still don't really know. I've been living in this world that like I guess TikTok has created, where my feed is these wonderful people that are being authentic and loving themselves and like trying to empower other people to be okay with who they are. And I've never been taught anything other than that. Why is there still this little knot of fear that I won't be accepted?
My brain, as an anthropologist, immediately goes like, even if your core family was really clearly supportive of you, what that tells me is that you were in a larger dominant society that gave you this kind of hesitation and maybe this idea that it might not be okay, even if the people that were right there supporting in your life said that it was. And so that's really interesting to hear, because I did an interview with somebody else in Edmonton who's also a queer anthro, like we're all gay apparently. And she was talking very similarly about how her family was so supportive from day one, and like had always been clear that it would not be an issue if any of their kids were queer or gay or trans or anything. It's interesting to see that she was able to kind of like hold that and not feel any stress about it. And then maybe for some other people, it's not the same situation.
There's this idea of you come out of the closet, especially in movies right now, is you come out of the closet and everything is good and life is rainbows, and that's the last time you ever have to do it, and no hardships come after that. But it's a journey. You just keep coming out to like everybody that you meet, but it doesn't just stop after the first time you come out.
Straight people never have to do that, right? Because it's always like the assumption of straightness. It's called heteronormativity for a reason. And I find with me where I'm at now, like I'm 25 years old. And so I kind of try really hard to just like, you know, just put it in as a normal thing because it is. But I find that comes to be more difficult when there's an aspect of power involved. And that would be like, say, if it's with my boss or something, I would feel nervous to mention that I'm going like, you know, on a date with a girl, or, you know, never mention anything about that part of my life because I don't know how they'll receive it. And then there's that object of power over me.
I am thinking about it now. I don't think my boss knows that I'm queer, that I'm dating a woman right now. But, and again, it's not a thing of shame. It's just like, I don't even know, like a precaution maybe, or like.
Exactly.
And it's not something that that I consciously think about, but like I can think of being like, oh yeah, like saying to new people, oh yeah, me and my girlfriend, and still getting like butterflies, or like a little bit like a bit of adrenaline rush. You're like, whoa, I did it again. I'm out there now. But
and you know, I sometimes use it as like a litmus test though. Like, you know, those TikTok videos that are like, okay guys, like, so how do you feel about gay people? Are you gay? Like, you know, sussing it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I'll like throw in something, very quickly if I'm in a group of people that I don't know and we're sharing stories. Be like, oh yeah, me and my ex-girlfriend did this. And then it's like, are you homophobic? Are you homophobic? Because if so, then we're not gonna vibe.
My girlfriend. Who is
yeah, it's very much like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, I think it's been really exciting. I'm really happy with my partner right now. And I feel super proud now, like lately, just be like, yeah, me and my girlfriend went to do this because I'm just so happy where I am right now. And it's like, yes, 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 that's who I'm with. And it's so funny. I guess it really depends on who you're talking to, but the position of power is not a dynamic I'd ever thought about, but very much there.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I really don't like that I have to feel, because I even had a whole conversation in my previous job where it was like, it's not anything that my boss did that made me feel like it wasn't safe to talk to them about being queer. It's just a reflection of my experiences in being queer in this specific province and with the attitudes that I hear about a lot. So I think a really big thing in the workforce is having organizations really step up and support their queer employees and have it not be performative, that's how you make real change.
Performative. Oh my gosh.
I hate it.
The little pin on your boss's desk during Pride Month. This definitely isn't what you think it's doing. This is not support. I need more than that. I need to know that this is a place that I'm not going to be judged or followed home because of who I choose to love or who I am, right? Because
if you just have this little sticker there to say that you're an ally with all of your actions totally contradicting that, then I'm out. It's kind of funny as we're talking about this, I'm even remembering how this affects my purchasing choices as just a consumer. And I'm like, I think it was one of the famous spaghetti brands got outed to be homophobic or something. So now every time I go to make spaghetti, I stand in the aisle and I'm like, which one of you is it? Which one of you is homophobic? Because I'm not going to buy it.
Me.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm going to circle us back really quick to something you pointed out a little earlier that I hadn't thought about in years until you brought it up. The fear of a queer person checking you out. I remember before I even knew that I was gay, being in grade 9 or 10 in high school, and my best friend at the time talking about a different girl at the school who was rumored to be gay and how she didn't want me to leave the change room because that other girl was there and she didn't want to be alone with this girl for that exact reason. Just what an immediately negative, awful perception to hyperimpose on queer people and all this kind of stuff with that stigma. I hadn't thought about that in so long.
Yeah, that person may not have even been queer. I remember being in the change room and being look down, look down, look down.
Exactly.
You're looking at your shoes. You're not looking at anyone else. And I remember not being openly queer in high school for that reason, because it wasn't the same tight-knit group of girls that I've been that chose to be in the dressing room with me and were happy to be at practice or whatever.
It really touches on those stereotypes of what a queer person is and predatory and all these sorts of things, which we're not. We're just people that happen to like people of the same sex or whatever it is. And so I even remember I had a coworker at one of my barista jobs or something when I was younger, and she was like, so do you check out every single girl that you see? And I just took a second and I looked at her and I was like, my friend, do you check out every single man that you see? And she went, no. And I went, so what makes you think I check out every woman
Why
I see?
would I? Exactly.
And she was just boom, this incredible moment for her where she was like, yeah, you're right. You must have a type and, just basic respect for women as a woman. So yeah, it's, I think, really important to combat those older ideas that really are just manifestations of somebody's negativity.
We aren't born hateful. Hate is always taught.
Yeah.
Question that. Why would you think that? Let's change that thought, because I'm not looking at you in the change room because you're not looking at me.
So growing up queer in sports, did you find you had any representation of maybe gay athletes or gay Albertans?
I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing, which is why it was so scary, because I knew there was one other person in my like our league or like association that was queer, and quite openly so. And kind of like a don't ask, don't tell policy, I think, in sports right now, which I hope changes. Like a lot of people knew that this person was queer, but no one ever said anything about it, which is awesome. And also like, why? Well, you don't really have to like hide it or like brush it under the carpet. But there was nothing in my world at the time that was queer. I was talking to my mom about like, should I be telling my teammates? I don't know if I want my teammates to know. And my mom was like, you know what, Grace, there's someone that I work with at work who her wife plays hockey, like they play hockey together.
Wow.
And it's not a big deal and no one cares. I didn't even know them. I just knew of them, like an idea of them through my mom, through her work, not even in my sport, in the same realm, but not even in my sport, that was queer, that wasn't my age, that like for all I knew didn't even actually exist. I didn't know of any queer athletes growing up, and especially not in like women's sport. Like I think there was an NFL player who came out, I think over the summer, and that was huge. And it's like, that's so great. And I know there are other people, but the fact that you were brave enough and felt comfortable enough to say it in front of a whole bunch of people that like in sports generally aren't super open to that kind of thing is really powerful.
The only real representation that I could think of in sports for queer athletes was like the US women's national soccer team.
Yes.
Right? Like I remember being on Tumblr, because of course I was on Tumblr. In like, yeah, of course, like in like 2013 or 2014, and seeing like, I think it was Ashlyn Harris and Ali Kruger, I can't remember.
I think Kruger, but yeah.
Yeah, and like seeing the two of them together and like all of this like, you know, coverage about them. So it's like there was a little bit of representation there, but it also felt so far away. It's like, oh yeah, they're playing in the States, like they're in LA or whatever it is, and not here in Alberta. They're
like larger than life, right? Like when a celebrity comes out, it's like, oh, good for you. I don't even know if you exist. You could not exist for all I know. But yeah, the representation wasn't there, and I hope that it will be for people that go through this journey now.
We're kind of making that representation right now, honey. So I'm just gonna point it out in case you didn't realize it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That feels good.
Yeah, it must feel kind of like a full circle moment to get to be the representation that little you maybe didn't get to have.
Yeah, it does. It's really powerful.
What would you like to tell other queer Albertans in sports or just in general who maybe are struggling with some of the same things that you did when you were growing up?
When all the tension is out of you, when you're trying to play, it's so much easier. And when you're not worried about people thinking of you differently on the bench, it's so much easier to play and to enjoy the sport, because it's so not enjoyable when you're worrying all the time. So if you can take that worry off, it goes back to being fun instead of being a hassle. So you join the sport for it to be enjoyable, and you stuck with it because you love it. If you can find it in yourself to be comfortable or whatever you strive to be, it's because you want it to be fun again, because it's stressful right now, and let it be fun. It's what it's supposed to be.
You're really making my whole don't cry thing a bit sad. I am an emotional pushover, apparently, when it comes to these interviews, but I think that is so well said. Thank you. If you could go back in time and tell your younger self something as the person that you are today, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. I don't think about this very often. They're gonna love you no matter what. And the sooner you can get over being afraid, the sooner everyone around you is going to rally, and the sooner you're going to find awesome people oh my gosh, awesome people in your life that aren't going to care. And it's not as big as you think, and it's so special, and you're not the only guy out there. And it gets so much better, and it gets so much better so fast. And it's just the hurdle that you have to clear, and then you're done.
Oh, honey, you are so special, and you are not the only guy out there, 100%.
Yeah.
I feel so lucky to have gotten to know you and hear your story today, and I think that you just living authentically and proudly as yourself is going to inspire so many other young kids and kids in sports.
I hope so. It's such a blind area in this whole thing of I don't think people expect queer people to be in sports. We are. Surprise!
Yeah, we're fit.
Yeah, this is so cool. I think this is so important, and I hope people keep doing this and keep opening the conversation, because if we don't open the conversation, we're all going to live in our little bubbles without knowing other people exist, and then we can branch out, and then it doesn't have to be a bubble anymore. So
exactly, it can be a whole kick-ass community. Like, who says you have to go to Toronto to party with the gays? We're here.
Exactly. It's Alberta. We're here in Alberta.
Yeah, we are here, and we are here to, as I said, yassify the shit out of this place.
Exactly. I came out in COVID, so I've never been to Pride, so this will be the first one. I've never been to a gay bar either. I went to a drag bar in Victoria, and it was like the best thing ever. It was like, this
incredible.
Is so cool. Queer people in the wild is so cool. So yes, we will go to Pride. We'll have a great time.
Yeah.
And Edmonton's only like 3 hours away, so I can probably hit like a whole bunch.
That's so much fun. And like, it makes sense that you've never been to Pride with COVID and everything, but honey, you got to get out there. If it's safe, it is the best.
I'm so excited.
Well, it has been wonderful to chat with you. Could I ask what your TikTok handle is for me to tag you in the video?
It's just one word, Grace Hill, with 2 R's in Grace.
Okay.
I think that's it. I think that's the whole username.
Perfect. Okay, I will be sure to give you a follow, as well as this is to the fictional audience again, our favorite people to talk to. Yeah. To anybody listening or watching, please go give Grace a follow, because clearly they're just creating some amazing representation with sports here in Alberta.
Thanks so much. This is awesome. I had a great time.
Yay! Okay, well, that is a wrap.